Hello, you're on the Ruslan Belov channel. Today we'll discuss the situation in Ukraine as of April 19th, 2025. Let's start with the biggest news, of course, the Easter truce. This Easter truce was announced today by Vladimir Putin during a meeting with the chief of the Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov. So the truce has already begun, but Zelensky has rejected it. So far, I haven't seen a clear response from the Ukrainian side. Of course, such an answer won't please Trump, and I think he will pressure Zelensky to accept it. In any case, the response will soon become clear. The ceasefire regime has been introduced for humanitarian purposes and will be observed by the Russian joint military grouping, provided it is reciprocally observed by the Kiev regime. Additionally, during the meeting between Gerasimov and Putin, several very important statements were made. Essentially, Putin gave a small directive, a kind of mechanism on how the Russian army should react if the Ukrainian side violates the ceasefire. What does Putin say about this? Our troops, the Russian troops, must be prepared for provocations and any aggressive actions by Kiev. The course of the truce will show the Kiev regime's readiness, desire and ability to resolve the issue peacefully. Putin also instructed Gerasimov to separately report when the Kursk region is completely cleared of the enemy. That is, the Ukrainian armed forces. Now let's move to the front line. We'll start with the Sumy direction. There is a lot of objective control footage, as well as some frontline adjustments. Let's begin with the footage. Today, reports indicate that the city of Sumy is without electricity. There's some kind of blackout. No one is saying that strikes were carried out on energy infrastructure. However, today the Russian side published objective control footage showing that no strikes were carried out on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. During reconnaissance operations, the Russian side managed to detect several fuel trucks, possibly carrying ammunition, positioned right in the city center. A strike was carried out on them, and it's possible that secondary detonation damaged some energy infrastructure facility, leaving the city without power. That's roughly what happened in Sumy over the past day. Next, we move to the Zaporizhzhia direction. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that during combat operations, the Russian armed forces have established full control over the settlement of Oleshnya. That is, the entire settlement has been cleared by the Russian army. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, Ukrainian forces have retreated into Sumy Oblast. This was the second-to-last settlement under Ukrainian control. Only the village of Gornyal remains, where fighting is currently ongoing. Additionally, the Ministry of Defense and Gerasimov reported that the clearing of the monastery has been completed. We previously discussed the Gornyal monastery, and now the Russian army is advancing directly into the village of Gornyal itself. Some cartographers are making minor adjustments to the map, showing slight progress toward the village, which is in a rather unfavorable position for an assault. However, the Russian army apparently plans to complete the Gornyal offensive operation by May 9th at the latest, possibly even by May 1st. The Russian side will fully restore control over Sumy Oblast. It's even possible that in some areas they will cross the border and approach certain settlements inside Ukraine. There are still Ukrainian armed forces positions in Belgorod Oblast, but this is also likely to be resolved by May 1st or May 9th. We'll see. Next, we move to the Vovchansk sector of the front. Over the past few days, we've been paying special attention to this direction because the Russian army continues intensive operations against Ukrainian logistics. Today, we received another batch of footage showing how Russian drones, artillery and troops are striking and destroying Ukrainian logistics in this sector. Here we can see a Ukrainian military vehicle moving, most likely toward a crossing. However, it's possible that mine barriers or drone-deployed barricades were set up along the crossing route. We can see how, as the vehicle approached another bridge, it was destroyed. This happened near the village between Zibino and Krychne. Additionally, footage of strikes on a bridge near Volokhovka has been released. This strike was carried out yesterday, but today we received higher quality footage from a different angle, providing a clearer picture. To summarize, we can see that the Russian side is actively working along the Vovcha River. Most likely, after this Easter truce, the Russian side will push through the entire grey zone from the state border up to the river, creating a security buffer zone with a depth of approximately 5 kilometers. Not 25 kilometers, as some experts claim, but somewhere between 3 to 5 kilometers into Ukrainian territory. Finally, we move to the Kupyansk sector. There have been minor frontline adjustments near the village of Kamyanka. According to some cartographers, mostly neutral or pro-Russian, over the past day, the Russian armed forces managed to straighten the front line between Kamyanka and Krasnoperva. We can see that fighting is now taking place for a small forested area west of Kamyanka. After this, the Russian army will likely advance further toward the next forested area. Combat operations here have slowed down. For some time, the Russian side was actively advancing, but it appears that Ukraine has redeployed some units here. Now, the pace of the offensive has slightly decreased. Next, we move to the Lyman sector of the front, where important news and footage are coming in. Today, the Russian army has once again significantly expanded its zone of control around settlements such as Redkodub, Novoye, and Novomikhailivka. Let's break it down step by step. Novomikhailivka. Mostly neutral experts report that Russian units have now taken control of at least 60 to 70% of Novomikhailivka. The most critical positions, the forested areas on the southern outskirts, have been secured. The Ukrainian side still holds open terrain, which is easily targeted by artillery and drones. Given this pace, the Russian side may fully clear Novomikhailivka within the next 24 hours. Novoye and Redkodub. There are also reports that the Russian armed forces have significantly expanded their control zone northwest of Novoye and have advanced right up to Redkodub. Essentially, Russian troops have already reached the eastern outskirts of the village, and within the next day or so, we may see the first objective control footage of combat operations inside Redkodub. The map may soon be updated to reflect Russian advances in the settlement. Just yesterday, footage confirmed Russian control over the central and eastern parts of Novoye. Today, we're already hearing about advances into Redkodub. What does this tell us? The pace of the Russian offensive isn't slowing for a second. Despite Ukraine's attempts to stabilize the situation, they have so far been unable to do so. The Oskol River sector today, footage was released showing the Russian armed forces striking a crossing along the Oskil Reservoir. This indicates that Russia is actively targeting Ukrainian logistics not only near Vovchansk, but also in the southern Kupyansk direction, where a significant Ukrainian contingent is concentrated. The Siversk sector. The Russian army is gradually advancing along tree lines and forested areas south and southeast of Serebryanka. They are slowly closing in on these villages. Additionally, objective control footage shows strikes on forward positions and temporary deployment points of Ukraine's 54th Mechanized Brigade, stationed on the eastern outskirts of Siversk. The footage likely shows the impact of several FAB bombs, possibly including a 3,000-kilogram munition, which destroyed the brigade's temporary base. Chasiv Yar, Kostiantynivka, and Donetsk sectors. Chasiv Yar, no major changes on the map. The Russian side is engaged in artillery duels, drone strikes, and hunting Ukrainian FPV drone operators. Clearing operations continue toward Markov and Fedorivka, possibly the next direction of advance in the coming days, especially after the Easter truce. Toretsk-Nelipivka. Breakthrough. No additional updates. The map remains unchanged for now. However, the Russian army continues assault operations north toward Dylivka. Breaking news. Just before recording, my assistant sent me unconfirmed reports that Russian forces have advanced right up to Dylivka and may have already taken full control of southern Dylivka. We'll discuss this further tomorrow, but preliminary materials suggest Russian troops have secured this area. The most active sector, Klishchivka-Andriivka, Kleban-Bike direction. Today, we're seeing a massive number of Russian flags, indicating significant territorial gains in the past 24 hours. Kalinove, Shevchenko. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that Southern Group troops took control of Shevchenko in Donetsk. Initially, some experts thought this referred to Shevchenko south of Pokrovsk, but it turned out to be the eastern part of Kalinove, likely an old Soviet-era name for this small district. Advance toward Stara Mikhailivka. Russian forces continue moving north toward Stara Mikhailivka, where geolocated footage shows systematic strikes on Ukrainian positions. anti-tank and machine gun positions, FPV drone operator hideouts. This suggests preparations for a potential assault on Stara Mikhailivka in. After the Easter truce, anything can be expected. Eastern Front, H20, Highway and Suka Balka. Slightly further east, fighting continues along the H20 highway and near Suka Balka. By the end of April 19, most cartographers, except pro-Ukrainian ones, confirm that the Russian armed forces have taken full control of Suka Balka. Pro-Ukrainian sources still claim only about 50% control, but the overall trend and pace of the offensive indicate that, just like in the Lyman-Borov direction, the Ukrainian armed forces are unable to stabilize the situation despite their efforts. In this sector, Ukraine may soon deploy its 12th Special Forces Brigade to hold the line, as they are responsible for this area. However, Russian forces have not yet reached their primary defense zone, stretching from Alexandropol, Zaria, Romanivka to Shcherbinivka. Until this pocket is fully cleared, we shouldn't expect any serious Ukrainian counteractions. Pokrovsk sector, Myrnohrad. Breakthrough. Moving to the Pokrovsk sector, Ukraine has thrown in the 1st Army Corps of the National Guard, Chervona Kalina, to stabilize the front near Myrnohrad. A few days ago, Russia launched a massive offensive here, so significant that even Zelensky commented on it, claiming heavy Russian losses and a forced retreat. However, objective control footage tells a different story. Russian forces broke through Ukrainian defenses and entered Myrnohrad. As of now, at least 50% of the settlement is under Russian control. Footage shows Russian military equipment moving freely through southern Myrnohrad, though under drone threat. Pro-Russian analysts mark the entire southern part as secured, confirming a solid foothold, meaning Ukraine would now need counter-assaults to dislodge them. Next objective, encirclement of Pokrovsk. The Russian army is slowly pressing the eastern flank of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. After Myrnohrad, the next ambitious targets are likely: Nova Ekonomichna, Malinivka, Vodyane II, and Berezivka. If taken, this would partially encircle Pokrovsk, mirroring tactics seen in Bakhmut, Artemivsk, where Russia systematically cut off supply routes, creating roads of death for Ukrainian forces. Vuhledar and Udivan clashes. Udivan, intense fighting continues. Pro-Ukrainian maps show a grey zone expanding east, but objective footage suggests Russian advances. One clip shows Russian soldiers hiding under an abandoned train to evade Ukrainian drones. Bodanivka, South Donetsk direction. After initial setbacks, Russian forces are pounding the southern and southeastern parts with artillery, preparing for another push post-truce. Zaporizhzhia front, Malaya Tokmachka breakthrough. On the Zaporizhzhia axis, Russia continues its offensive. New footage confirms a breakthrough near Malaya Tokmachka, with Russian troops securing southeastern barracks and a mine complex. Ukraine's 118th Brigade released strikes on these positions, but the area appears fully under Russian control. After the truce, Russia has a clear path to take all of Malaya Tokmachka, which could collapse Ukrainian defenses further south, opening a route toward Robotyne. Meanwhile, north of Shcherbaki, Russian forces are systematically burning Ukrainian positions with heavy artillery, likely preparing for a future push toward Kupyansk and the southern outskirts of Stepnohirsk, Novokotlivka, and Lukyanivska. Final thoughts. The Easter truce has barely slowed Russia's momentum. Key takeaways: Lyman Suka Balka, rapid Russian gains, Ukraine struggling to respond. Pokrovsk sector, Myrnohrad foothold threatens encirclement of Pokrovsk. Zaporizhzhia, Malaya Tokmachka captured, frontline destabilizing. South Donetsk, Bodanivka under heavy fire, new offensive imminent. Closing, thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for updates. Happy Easter to all celebrating.